The server installation will take around an hour to complete, maybe less. And after that you will receive an email as follows with the IP address, the server name, username, password, and the same username and password, and how you can access the web interface. If you browse to the web interface, you can download the client from here. In case it's slow or it doesn't work, this client in some cases, then you can also download it from the official website. And then in this case, you will want to get this client right here. Now we can log in with our credentials from the email. Here you will click ignore. And then you will just click OK. It doesn't matter if the evaluation is expiring. The first thing that you want to do is that you want to look at the root user and maybe change the password by typing in a new password here and clicking OK. The next thing that you want to look at is the configuration. So you'll click Configuration, Storage, and then in your case you will only have 2 terabyte drive. So you won't have enough space to store everything on the first data store. So you will have to click Add Storage and Disk-Lun. Click Next, and here you will have another 2 terabyte hard disk, because the server that you chose had 2 terabyte hard disks. So you will click Next, 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 Data Store 2, Next, Next, and Finish. This will take a few moments for the server to add, and now you should have 2 terabyte disks. This data store will be used for the virtual machine and the rainbow tables that you will be downloading from the internet, while this disk will be used for storing or converting the tables into their original format. So now that we have 2 of these, we can create a new virtual machine so you can see how it's done. Before we can create a new virtual machine, we will need the ISO as well. So you can download for example, a Debian ISO from this website, and then you will select AMD64. Once you have downloaded the ISO file, you can upload it to the VMware server. So what we will do is that we will say Browse Data Store, and then we will create a new folder and say OK. Here we will upload the file to the data store. Now we will choose AMD64 and click Open. Just click Next. This step will take a few moments to complete, depending on your internet connection. I've already uploaded it to data store 1, so we will use the one that has been uploaded to data store 1. So we'll just close this window, and then we will click New Virtual Machine. Click Custom, Next, call this Kraken 2, click Next, and here we will select the appropriate data store. In your case, you will select data store 1, which has 2 terabytes, and then you will add a new disk later. But in this case, we will use data store 2. And now we will select the latest version, and we will select Linux, select Debian 64-bit. Here, just assign it as many cores as you can, so 4 sockets, 2 cores. And here you should give it at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is the default for your server. You can give it 8 if you prefer. The default network is fine. Fine. Create a new virtual disk. This is important as you will need to select 1.65 terabytes approximately. You can also do it with maybe 170. Just make sure that you also have enough space for the other partition. So in this case, 1.65 should be fine. It's also important in some cases to specify the data store. So we will select data store 2 in this case. In your case, you may have to select data store 1. And then we will click next. Now the virtual machine configuration is not finished yet, and it will take a few moments to create as well, which you can see down here. Once the virtual machine has been created, it will be, you can see it right here. It will be visible here. Now we need to add another disk. So we'll go here and click add, and then we will say that we want a new hard disk. Create new virtual disk. And this one will also be 1.65 or 170 terabytes. In this case, you will also click specify data store. And in my case, I will use this data store. And in your case, you will most likely select data store 2 because data store 1 is where the virtual machine will be, including the downloaded tables, and data store 2 will be the second hard disk image. And then we will click next. Now we're almost ready. We still need to do a few more configuration options. First, we need to just click OK. And once the hard disk has been added, we will need to add networking and enable the cd-rom drive. In order to enable our virtual machine to access the internet, we will need to grant it a new IP address. We can do that by clicking Manage, and then on this new page, we will have to order a new IP address. You will only need one, and you will have to select the server that you're going to do it for. In this case, we'll click Next, and you will only need one, and then you will just take a random country. I selected France. And then you will click Next, and Accept, and Next. Once you've ordered a new IP address, you'll be able to identify it by looking at the FO sign, which means failover. By default, it will point towards the VMware IP address, which is this one. Before you can use it, you will have to click this little wheel and add virtual Mac. And at the next step, you will select VMware and then Next. After a few moments, you will have a virtual MAC address, which you can use for VMware. Now that we're back in VMware, we can click Virtual Machine Settings. And here you will need to select the network adapter, manual, and copy and paste in the MAC address. And click OK. Once we've done that, we can use this machine to access the internet. Next, we will have to add the ISO image that we uploaded. So we will select Data Store ISO, Browse, and then we will select the ISO file that we uploaded and click OK. It's important that you select Connected here, and you may have to select this as well. Before we continue, we should also force the boot options into the setup screen because we need to change the bootloader configuration or the boot order. Now we can power on the virtual machine. Click Console and wait a few moments, and we have the BIOS. You can use the arrow keys to navigate the menus. In this case, we only need to change the boot order, where we will select cd-rom drive and use the minus or plus sign to move it up to the top. Next, we will exit and save the changes. Now we can install VMware or Debian, and we'll click install. And English, that's fine. We don't need to worry too much about that, so that's fine. Now, an issue that I've come across is that I'm unable to get the internet working during installation, and that means that we will have to add internet after we've installed the OS, which takes a little bit longer, but it does work. So here you can click cancel, and you can also click cancel here. Instead, you will choose to not configure the network at this time. And now we will select the hostname, call it Kraken2, press tab, and click continue. Here we will select the password and click continue. And type it in to verify. Call it administrator, and we will, that's the password. That was not the, I thought it was the username, but it's not, so we will just type in the password, and that's fine. And now we'll just wait a few moments and click guided use inside disk, and we will select the first disk. This one will be used for our other stuff later on, so we will use the first disk. And here we will select all files in one partition because it's easier to manage when we are trying to use all 1.8 terabytes of space. And we'll say finish. And say yes. And wait a few moments. Now that the base installation has been finished, we can select a network mirror, or we can not do it. The thing is that we won't be able to choose or use a network mirror, so we'll have to do that later. So we will say continue without a network mirror, say yes, and wait a few moments again. Now we will install the grub bootloader by selecting yes, and we will select dev SDA, which is our first hard disk. Now the installation is complete, and we can select continue. Now that the installation is complete, we can try and log in. And then we will need to fix the internet. I found a nice guide which helped me add the necessary commands that we will need to use. You can find it in the description as well. We will need to enter these commands here. Now that we've added the most basic stuff, we still need to add the failover IP address and the broadcast. So we will just add the failover IP address first. And the same is the broadcast. For the gateway, we need to modify our VMware IP address slightly and add 254 instead of the last octet. So we will add 254, and we will do the same here for the others. Now that we've added all of the necessary information, we can save the file with Ctrl O, Ctrl X, and then it may work. We may have to add enabled interface or restart networking. In order to enable the internet, the fastest way to do it is probably just to reboot the server. So we'll just reboot and wait a few moments. I know that you usually don't have to reboot to do anything in Linux, but this is relatively quite fast. And we will confirm with ifconfig, and we can see that we have our IP address right here. So we will just confirm that we have internet by pinging Google's name server a few times, not too many. Control C to stop, and it works. We don't have DNS yet because we haven't set any resolvers yet. So we'll do that now. And now let's confirm that it's working. As you can see, we now have DNS as well. So now we can use the internet. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to edit our repository. So we will edit the sources.list file. And here we will need to uncomment these two lines and also these two lines. In my case, I'm going to use the OVH mirrors, which are a lot faster. So we'll just confirm that that's correct, these two lines, that's the first two. Instead of using these mirrors, we will use the OVH mirrors. This is not super interesting, so because we will have to type it in manually. So once we've entered all of this information, which we could have gotten by uploading it to another server, maybe just using vget or netcat or something, then we can save the file and test it. So we'll just say apt-get update and see that it works, that there are no errors. It looks like we have one error, so that means that we need to fix the sources list a little bit, because I made a spelling mistake. In this case, I misspelled mirrors right here. Forgot an R. And now we can try again. And it looks like it's working. So now we can install SSH, which will make it a lot more easier. In order to connect to our SSH server, we will need to do a few minor configuration checks. So we will check the file, and we may need to change this to yes, and then say service SSH restart. Then we will have to note the IP address. We will use this IP address in PuTTY, where we can use it from Windows instead, or Linux. So we'll just you'll type in the IP address here, and then you will click open, click yes, and then we can try and log in. And then we have access to the SSH console, which is much easier to work with.